Guys, here we go. Let's talk about what happens with IFI. IFI is immediately invoked function expression. And with IFI, we're going to talk about the conversation that happens at the compile phase. And then another phase that happens right after is actually the execution runtime phase. So here we go. At the compile phase, what happens is um, the job of the compile phase is to get all of variable declarations and function declarations are stored into the scope that it belongs to, that it is in. So first of all, we're in global scope right now, and it looks at variable declaration my var and talks to the scope, global scope, and goes, hey, we have a variable declaration called my var. We're gonna have to store it into the global scope, and the global scope goes, okay, give me the variable declaration. We will store it into the global scope, and so we create a variable declaration called my var and store it into the global scope. So that's what happens, right? And yep, so this is declared in, and well, by the time that is gone, because we create a variable declaration and stored into the global scope. So what's left is after the variable declaration has been created into the scope is this assignment, and that's what runtime is gonna see. We're still in compiling phase though, and then now we look at it. Is this function declaration? No, it's not, because the statement needs to start out with the function keyword in order to make it function declaration, but we have a parenthesis right at the front to prevent it. So this is not a function declaration. We all know that. If you don't know, immediately invoked function expression, IFI, it's just function object that gets executed without us telling it to do so. It executes by itself immediately. So what we worry about at the compiling phase is just declaring functions and declaring variable declarations and storing it away. So this is not a function declaration, so we just skip it. There's no more codes, and all the compile phase is done. So we're gonna start out with the runtime now. That happens immediately after the compiling phase is done. And it looks at it, and what's left is my var equals my value, because variable declaration has already been created, got hosted, and got stored away into the global scope. So what's left is this assignment for execution. And that makes sense, right? Because we're at runtime now, so the variable and function declaration should be gone. So it should look like this. And this looks like a running time code. And so we look at the runtime, we communicate with the scope engine back again to get the stuff back that we have declared and stored in. And how we do that is by using two terms called RHS versus LHS. And when I talk about this in the last video, um, check out all those videos that I've made from the beginning till now to really understand all the concepts that I am talking about. And all of these concepts are things that I've learned from Kyle Simpson's book, and it's amazing book. Talks about a lot of concepts and fundamentals that takes place before you write good codes. And I just started JavaScript last month. I come from Ruby background, and it really saved me tons of time, I believe. Even though JavaScript is kind of not that hard to start writing, I think learning all these concepts really takes you to the next level. And if you study the concepts and write at the same time, I feel like it's a lot of things to think about and pause yourself while writing. If you actually understand the concepts, it's actually will give you a lot of delays when learning, but in the long run you actually get this whole like this whole perspective of what to think about and how everything is created and how everything is run while you're writing the code. So in the long run, it's just more complete knowledge, I feel like. And everyone says, Stack Overflow and stuff like that, like all these concepts you have to understand anyways. And if you're here, That means you actually did some YouTube search and found this. So, anyways, I really recommend Kyle Simpson's book, and it's a great book. All right, here we go. Where were we? Sorry about that. I got sidetracked. So yeah, so the variable that so we look for LHS intend to use called my var. We look for LHS identifier called my var. Do you have a global scope? And it goes, yes, I have created a variable declaration called my var. Gives it back to us, and we store a value inside, and then we're done with that line. Next line, we see this. This is a function expression. Is this LHS? No, it's not. It's RHS, right? Because it's not LHS. It's not an identifier that we're looking for to assign a value to it. We're actually trying to execute. So it has to be RHS. However, we're not looking for identifier. This is a iffy function expression. So think of it as like this. By the time it hits this code, it looks at this parentheses, right? Thinks of it as, and then it looks at the function, and then it goes, okay, it's a function here, it's a function expression, it's a function value, therefore we need to create this function. So at runtime, it looks at this as a function expression, function value, as if you did something like var something function like that, right? What happens at the compile time in this case is variable declarations happen, and at the runtime, only this is going to be left, and it's going to go, hey, we need LHS reference called something, right? And it's going to get it back, and then we're going to assign this value, and the value happens later, right, at the compile time, right? And then the assignment happens after we get the LHS reference, and then the assignment happens, and that's when the function is created. Same concept. Just think of this parentheses as something like this that we just don't look up, right? And it looks at the function and goes, this is a function expression. It's a value. So we create the function now at the runtime. And then what happens when a scope is created? When a function scope is created? Hoisting. Hoisting is an action, default action that happens immediately whenever a function scope is created. It goes hand in hand. It's a tied in behavior mechanism whenever function object is created or scope is created. What is hoisting? Hoisting is this concept of variable and function declarations getting hoisted up, raised up, and getting stored into the scope that it belongs to. In this case, this is the function scope. Goes and tries to declare everything and hoist it up. Alert is not any declaration. It looks at this and goes, hey, var my var is actually a variable declaration. So it declares the variable declaration and gets stores away, right, into this scope. So what's left is my var equals local value, right? Created a scope, did the hoisting, which includes variable and function declarations, stored it away into its scope, looks outside, and it's executed because of this line, right? It immediately executes the function. And when it does that, it recursively goes in, back again, and reads this line because that's what's left. And goes, alert my var. Hey, scope of function that I am currently in right now, we're looking for RHS reference identifier called my var because it's not LHS because we're not trying to assign a value to it. You have this RHS identifier called my var. And it goes, yes, we do. We have this variable declaration that we just created, my var, but it doesn't have any value to it because the value assignment is happening after this code, right? So we didn't get to it yet, so it does not have any value, but we're asking for it and we got it, and we're doing alert and we execute this alert function and bam, undefined comes out because undefined is actually a value that stands for no value. So undefined happens, and then we ask for myvar left LHS left hand side identifier called myvar, and the function scope gives it back to us, and we assign a value. Now there's a value, and we're done. So that's a little bit different from everything else we have talked about earlier, and that's basically how we deal with iffy. And this is something that I had to do some research and understand as well when I was learning. And yeah, we're gonna talk about function expressions next, and there's a lot of um, things that I want to make create a video blog about in the long run, which is a how to get this the value of this of a function in 4 different ways, and just other things that I've learned in the book and will continue to learn. All right, see you guys next time.